Hello everyone, how you guys doing? Hopefully you guys are having a wonderful day, and today we are back again with another PWCC weekly review where I go through the top 100 soccer card items for the week that were bought and sold on PWCC. As always, hopefully you guys enjoy. If you do, make sure to leave a like. Helps the video, helps the channel a ton, and I appreciate it greatly. But with that said, let's go ahead and get on into it. Notably this week, we're starting below the $100 mark. I always find it fun to see where that is. I also find it fun that basketball, the mark to get into the top 100 is $1,000, while in soccer it's only $100. So that's a whole different tier in and of itself, a whole different level they've reached, and that really shows where we're at. And you know, it's nice to be the little guy, I think, and it's much more fun for collecting. So for the sake of that, let's get into it. A SGC 9 Messi to start from a Champions League sticker set. We then have a Heinerle, a Puskás, and a PSA 2. A sticker auto Di Maria from the recent World Cup victory. We've seen some of the Puskás go in this grade. A little light on the sale, I guess, in comparison to some, but nothing all too out of the ordinary. We have a Jordan Pickford Kaboom, a Brendan Aronson on-card auto. Next to that, we have a Vinicius Holo. Above that, a couple Maradonas here. We have a 79 Hace Millones de Años in a PSA 1, next to a Discalciatori in a BGS 7.5. Then we have an Enzo color match going for 100 in an SGC 10. Above that in this row, a few odds and ends, a Pele yellow and red Pulsar in a PSA 9 from the World Cup Stars subset. Then we have a relatively attainable Sindelar from the 1932 Bulgaria Sport in a CSG 6. From what people say and what I've heard, CSG is a little lighter, or I guess more lenient on these grades than maybe, you know, an SGC or PSA. At least that's what I've been told and seen. Personally, I don't have much experience with CSG. I have graded with CGC, and in my experience, that's the way it is in Pokemon. They tend to grade a bit better or a bit higher in sort of the med grades than maybe a PSA would. I'd be interested if more people have that experience. At least that's what I tend to see out there. Next to that, we have a Romario Merlin Shooting Stars in a PSA 8. Row above that, we have a sticker Verlag Pele that we see a good bit in a 2. Then we have a, I'm guessing, just player worn patch. Going to be kind of hard to see here. Yeah, player worn, going for 112. Nothing all too crazy. This sticker probably has. I mean, you could do a whole video on it in and of itself, and you know, maybe I will. I don't know. But yeah, sad ending. We'll just go with that. At least where it's at now. PSA 9, $112. There was a time, you know, I talk about it every time I see this one, but that was probably at least $2,000 to $3,000, and now it's $100. And that's just how narratives change, right? And obviously this is a World Cup sticker release, so there's a lot more of them. It's hard to keep the narrative if there's a lot of supply, because then, you know, more and more people all have to be, you know, clamoring for it, which is hard to keep up with. And that's part of what happened here. But also it goes to show that 3 people on a card, you know, all of this, like, you mix and match and put all these autos on a card, and now it's a 1 of 1 and it's supposed to be really special. I don't see it. That's why I like whenever the Messi, Haaland, Ronaldo auto came out, the 1 of 1, everyone's freaking out. It's not really that great of a card. I mean, in reality, I just don't see it. Obviously, you know, to a niche collector, it can be cool. I can see the value, but at the same time, it's very hard to sort of hit it mainstream with that. Above this, I found this really interesting in PSA 1, PSA 2, basically side by side for the same price. And looking at them, I can kind of see why. I mean, this Cruyff, much better colors, so personally I prefer that. I checked the backs on both. I mean, this back isn't great, but this one isn't anything to write home about either. And yeah, this is pretty center. I mean, I like this one, honestly, so I can see why it happened. Nothing all too crazy in terms of a PSA 1 price. A PSA 2, that's a little low, but comparatively, I can see it. Dino Zoff 65 here in the middle and a PSA 3.5. Not all too high of a grade there, so pop 1 of 1, none higher. We have a Tupanamba Didi from the 1960 set. We also have a Kareem Adeyemi Gold from the Aoki set. Absolutely hate the Aoki set. I am not a fan. Neymar Purple goes for 126. I didn't look that up because I feel like it's probably not a terribly strong sale, so I don't want to look up treble and just put it in a bad light. But at the same time, it's a PSA 7, so it's 1 of 2. And Neymar at the moment is definitely not in a good spot. The Saudi move's not going to put you in, you know, hobby darling territory like it would with, you know, Messi going to the MLS. We've already seen that with Ronaldo. And Ronaldo has much more of a brand to stand on and, you know, much more accomplished that's actually going to matter than Neymar, where, you know, now he falls by the wayside a little bit more. So if you're someone looking to get into Neymar, I actually think the next, you know, year or two could be a great time. I think this could be a great collecting era. But in terms of, buying now and looking to sell, I mean, if you're playing the flip game, buying, some arbitrage opportunities, maybe, but to hold and actually do well, I'm not sure. Because Neymar, I mean, you can already start to see it. People aren't talking about him as much. When people post their favorite cards and sets, Neymar doesn't really come up anymore. He used to. And I think that's part of it, right? Above that, we have a Rijkaard PSA 9 going for $126. Not a crazy price for what is a pretty good grade. Not a rookie, but still, there are people that collect the runs of those guys. And that's something that's underrated, I think, because with players like this, you know exactly what to get every year, which is so nice. We'll talk about some players here in a second where maybe that's not the case, and I don't see why people pay those prices. But something like this, I totally understand. 1959 Heinerle team and a PSA 2 goes for $126. We have the Stanley Matthews 1935 sort of oval edition for $126. We see that quite a lot. This is an example of, I guess people do like Topps Chrome and UCL, and it's sort of the standard item. But, with Jude, how many people are going around buying all the Jude base cards? I don't really know. And there's so many options, while with, Rijkaard, pretty simple. So very interesting to see that. This sale, I actually did want to look that up. 132 on this one. Last sale for an SGC one was 90, and then before that 80 and 100, 112, 88. So first big sale, I guess, relatively in a while. Those did come down a lot in basically every grade, but they did go up a lot after the boom sort of happened, because there was the boom and then there was the rush to vintage, then followed by the sort of fall of both in different timelines. So yeah, 132 there. Back's not that great, but it's a 1. So what are you gonna ask for? Here we have the Gazzetta. Above that, a 2017 Messi top of the class and a 10 going for 138. Here, I mean, I feel like this is pretty low if you're someone that like just starter vintage. 138 for a Maradona rookie and a 1 isn't anything crazy. Obviously doesn't look the best, but again, with a 1, you come to expect these sorts of things. Lev Yashin at 1959 Heinerle goes for 140. Decent price, but I actually think it was low relative. Yeah, I looked this up before. 264 was the last 2.5, and then there was a PSA 3 MK designation for 200 before that. So relatively to those, that seems pretty low. But again, like most things, this sort of had a later spike and then sort of a fall. And still really do love it. I think it's a great looking Heinerle image. The jersey is amazing. The background colors are so vibrant. And the colors on this one in particular are pretty good. Was sort of surprised to see this again. This is one that sold, I think it sold for like 250 or something, which at the time I was like, it seems sort of fair. Maybe it was a little high. This one goes for 144, and I think it's the same exact one. I didn't check the cert, to be honest, so maybe it's a different one, but I'm assuming it's the same one. This goes for 144. Feels kind of light to me. I mean, personally, when we talk about, best strikers of the last 20 years, I think Suarez has to be in that conversation and maybe near the top. And, I mean, almost any rookie for like a Benzema or a Lewandowski goes for way more than this. So I think that, a signed Luis Suarez, I would like it. And honestly, the card looked to be in pretty good shape. It's hard to tell with the white front, but with the orange back, not a lot going on. I mean, bottom right's, a little hurt, but with these types of cards, usually it's much worse. So congrats whoever got that. I think that's a really cool one. 2022 tie-dye out of 49. Row above that, nothing all too crazy. We see this Pele a good bit, at least of late, going for 150 there. Row above that, we have a PSA 8 Mega Fichas Ronaldinho, pop 1 of 9, 4 graded higher. Seems like a pretty decent price. I mean, it is early Ronaldinho. It's got Barca kit. It looks really, really nice, so I'll give it that. But a PSA 8 isn't a crazy grade, you wouldn't think. 2020, we have a Victor Osimhen going for 156, the out of 199. What is it? Aqua Refractor. Then we have Thierry Henry, 4.5 SGC going for 156. These are down a good bit, but they're sort of settling. It feels like that looks pretty good for a 4.5, I will say. I mean, corners look good. Front looks good. Probably a surface issue, I'd imagine. Above that, 1970 Pele and a BVG 7.5 going for 150. Like the nice yellow border there. We have a John Charles 1954. Says rookie. I'll take the word for it here, PWCC. But I would not do that if I was you. I would look further. But this goes for 156, so a decent price. We have another yellow and red Pulsar going for 162. I guess I'd probably rather take this than the Pele we saw earlier, which was like World Cup Stars. That was worth like $30 less. We have a 1993 Cannavaro here going for 160 and a 9. Muller here, PSA 2 goes for a little bit more than the Beckenbauer 1 we saw earlier, so I just presume that that's a pretty good sale since they usually go, moderately hand in hand with the Moeller selling for less. So it makes sense why this is where it is. Top 15% eye appeal. I really agree. I looked at this one and I was like, man, I'm not one of the people that would be into this, but maybe I should be. Maybe I'm just making bad life choices by not trying this type of stuff. But when you look at this does have a problem in the sense that the top, you can see sort of, I think these are basically the cut lines of where you're supposed to cut. The card looks pretty good. I mean, like, pretty well centered. The cut lines are up there, but you see that quite frequently, I would say, on the Bergman, so it's nothing crazy. And the corners, I mean, everything looks good. You look at the back, and compared to a lot of what we see with the PSA 2s, this is very good. This is a very, very, very good PSA 2 copy. The only real major signs, I guess, of removal is sort of down here. There are other ones where you can sort of see some crackling going on, and you get an idea, right? But man, the way and this is sort of the problem in the conundrum with PSA grading, right? At one point in time, and this is a 45 million cert, which is important because that's a while ago at this point. We're in the 70, 80 million range, getting close to 80 at this point. And so in the 45 million cert range, this is a 2. Why? Well, because it's removed from album. You can see that there's paper loss. Part of the card is missing or has been detached, and thus, it ruins a lot of the grade. Now, I think you could crack this and, at whatever price PSA gets down to. I mean, I'm sure at some point you could just send this in $15 ago, time after time after time again, and I could almost guarantee one of the PSA graders is gonna mess it up. He's gonna throw like a 5 or a 6 on here, and you're gonna have a much higher graded card than you did before. Now, whether or not the card's any different, of course it's not. It's the same exact card, but that's sort of just the conundrum of grading and where we are at this point, that stuff that might have used to be a 2 could be a 6 now, and stuff that, might have been a 6 before, or it might be a 6 now, would have been a 2 back in the day, and it's just really tricky and something to think about. I think whoever bought that got a really good deal, at least relative to what I see going on. So next to that, we have a Ronaldinho 9.5 early Navarrete sticker here in a slab that was pre-stickers being faked, so you'd presume this would be real. $174, also nothing too crazy to where people would be faking it heavily, you wouldn't think. We have a 2000s Merlin UEFA Euro Zinedine Zidane. I did look this up just because I was interested, and basically this one goes for $174. Last one before this went for $252 in June, and it actually is the same slab, since apparently this is just a pop 1-of-1. So someone took a little bit of a bath there, but $70-$80 in the grand scheme of things obviously isn't anything too crazy. Next to that, we have a Roberto Baggio PSA 7. Did want to take a peek at this just because I was I'm interested. I know sort of where it's been trending, and I want to see if it continued, and it did a little bit. Last sale was a few months back, goes for $204, now $174, and if you look at the prior sales, I mean, just one after another, for the most part dropping, and that's sort of just been the way it is. There was a time span there where going into the new year from December to July, there was only one sold, and it was a best offer, so that was kind of a high sale, but then we had 3 go to auction during the summer here. So once that happened, a lot less, demand to keep up with the supply, and so you see a bit of a drop there. We have a Shin here from the Bremer set from 1958, going for $174 for a rookie for him. Always be a little weary, I guess, with him, just because it's assumed that there is more out there for him, but for now, 1958 is the go-to. This was just, this camo Messi sort of always has been like a card for me that it's the type of card that I don't care about at all. Like when it comes to mid 2000s colors or parallels that I just don't care about. The out of 249 Select comes to mind because I think Select, the camo, they do something weird with it where like some years it's out of 20, some years it's out of 249. So for me, it doesn't have a pull to it because, some years you look at it and you think that's terrible. Other years I'm supposed to look at it and think it's great. So it's just so weird. And then you also have 2 different ones. So there's variation. There's the main base as well. And so you have 500 camos, and I don't really think they're that special. This is a PSA 9, still goes for $200 for Messi. So that's just sort of where Messi's at. Even his most basic of basic type of, mid 2000s parallel goes for $200 and a 9, and that is just the moment we are in at the moment. Little redundant, but you get my point. 2010 Topps Foosball, Robert Lewandowski here. Not a ton of early stuff for him, so that's why this does a premium. PSA 10, pop 1 of 11, 200 there. We also have a Manchester United Cristiano Ronaldo going for 200 BGS 9. Those are obviously down a good bit, as is Ronaldo in general. Personally, I've been buying some Ronaldo. I think now's a very good time. I've sort of had this internal battle, and I came to the conclusion that there is no world where you tell the story of Messi without telling the story of Ronaldo. Like, there's no world where everyone just says, hey, Messi's the best player ever, and then we totally don't talk about the dude that scored more goals than him in that same era. Now, does that work out? Maybe does Messi eventually get the goals record? I don't know. But if Ronaldo finishes with the goals record, especially with his celebration, just everything he's done beyond that. But I think his celebration, the goals record, being paired with Messi during that era, I think it's just, he's still an amazing player, and a lot of people are down on him, and rightfully so. You know, Messi won a World Cup, he's in Saudi, his career is on the decline, very heavily so, and Manchester United stint didn't really work out, so a lot of things going against him, which is why, personally, I think it's a decent time to buy, but of course, you know, you got to buy things you like and things you feel good about, and that's all a different challenge of its own. But continuing forward, we'll go back to a little bit of vintage here. Ruthola 85. We have PSA 8 goes for 200. Next to that, a Paolo Maldini and a CSG, or I guess SGC 6 going for 200 as well. I did look up Maldini just because I felt like it was appropriate since we just looked up Baggio. So here, 200 for this one. Last PSA 4 goes for 200 as well a couple months back. So that would seem really low to me. I would definitely take an SGC 6 over a PSA 4. Before that, you do have a CSG 6.5 for 200, so it's within the ballpark. I think Maldini and Baggio have struggled a lot just because they are players that aren't of the highest caliber, right? You know, even a player like George Best has struggled a lot recently, and that's a player where you know exactly what you want. There's one, well, in terms of rookies, there's one rookie. It's very iconic in terms of the soccer hobby, and so, you know, people know about it and it's highly desirable. While with Maldini, you know, not as desirable player, I wouldn't say. I mean, especially because defenders in the hobby don't get a lot of love. And then once you choose to buy Maldini or collect Maldini or go find one, you have to then decide which one you want. And so that becomes a whole different question of how do you want to go about that. And I think when you have all those questions and all those sort of bridges, you have to jump along the way. People just aren't going to. And so I think that's what's happening. But this is actually a really good grade. I mean, it says SGC pop 1 of 1, 2 graded higher. When I look back at the sales, I looked even further earlier and there weren't many high grades. So that all adds up. I don't think it's bad, but I do understand sort of the conundrum it's in at the moment. Here we have a Cruyff PSA 1. I mean, again, you know, sort of a prime example. I mean, this is Cruyff. Like, Cruyff's an amazing player. Obviously, it's a PSA 1, but, you know, these don't come out in high grades a ton. 1s and 2s are going to be mainly what you see, and Cruyff sells for the same price. And this is Cruyff, right? And this is, I guess, a 67 release, so, you know, that should carry some weight. Doesn't really at the moment, and rightfully so. The Palarex looks very nice, so I see why that happens. But, again, this is sort of the debate you have to go into. And, you know, if people don't really do it for Cruyff that heavily, you know, like 80s releases of lesser players, I don't really see it personally, but that's me. But on the other end of the spectrum, something I was talking about earlier was players from the modern day where are you even going to want this card? Like a 2018 Mbappe base, people talk about right now sort of how, oh, you know, certain cards, and I talked about this earlier, certain cards are just so, you know, out there, so plentiful, I don't even want it. Well, isn't this like the prime example of it? I mean, there are so many. I feel like most everyone at this point probably would feel like they don't even want it, but here it is for $200, and obviously people want it because there are a lot of them graded in a PSA 10, and they are holding at this price, and they've been doing decent for a while. I mean, Mbappe isn't doing anything crazy right now. He is at a good point of his career to where he might sort of make that step, but he's been in that limbo for a while. And this Haaland, you know, sure, hobby master, I guess, but how relevant of a card is that for Haaland long-term? Who knows, right? And so those are definitely, you know, much bigger gambles than the questions that you have to ask for this type of stuff. Notably, also this week, we are still in the $200 range, and we are almost like 2/3 of the way through. So it was very, very light on the high end. And again, I'm not sure why that is. If you guys think eBay's getting a ton of them, I'd love to hear. Maybe I'll start looking more at eBay. But I look at Golden, and Golden usually has like 5 or 10 big hitters, and then after that, it is very light. They only have like 100 items in total, while PWCC has closer to 200 to 300 usually, so it's a bit more to choose from. I also like the breadth that PWCC has. I will say that I'm very proud of, what goes on here. At Golden, it's mostly just like high end and then base junk, and it's not very fun. But here we have the 1984 Disc Calciatori Soccer Pack. So this is a year of which Maradona was there, and you can see Maradona on the top. We can't really, but if you know what you're looking for, you have the right light. Basically, there is the prismatic sticker inside that sort of has the foil around Maradona. Looks really nice, and to be able to get that in a pack for $204 on PSA 8 doesn't seem bad to me. Obviously, condition's a bit of a gamble when you open the pack, in the sense of, I guess you could, in theory, injure the sticker, or also, on top of that, just during the making process of the sticker, a lot can go wrong. So just because it's an 8-pack doesn't mean you're guaranteed a great grade, but you'd imagine, you could have that. And honestly, it would just be fun to keep in a pack. I love sealed packs personally, just because very, very hard to do to be able to keep that sealed. We have a 1970 Baggioli Hunt here. This is the Pele. We saw some of these with the full thing. Basically, you can punch out this little Pog-like item, or you can keep it all in one piece. We saw 3 recently go all in one piece. I think it was a Charlton, a Muller, and a Beckenbauer. Now we have the Pele going just with the small item by itself. I have some sales history here. So this PSA 3 goes for $200. We have a BVG 7 of the entire thing together that went for, what was it, near 1,930. Looking backwards, though, this in the past was pretty big. There weren't any sales back in the day, so it's very hard to go off of. But even in 2016, a BVG 4.5 with the entire item together went for $180. A PSA 1 went for $34 in 2018. So based on that price, you would think, 2018, maybe a PSA 3 goes for $50 to $100. And so if a 3 is going for $200 now, that doesn't seem definitely anything out of the realm of possibility, especially for Pele. Pele's had, a lot of heavy increases in a lot of his stuff, and I think this looks really good, especially a 1970 release. You have a lot of other really good-looking ones. I think that is a cool Pele. Pop 1 of 1 higher as well, which is pretty impressive considering the cert number 2, which is 22 million. So quite a while ago at this point. Couple other items here with the Paolo Rossi and the early attainable Puskás in a 3. We have a Netfinders Ronaldo PSA 9. I want to take a look at this just to see how it's doing, really. And generally speaking, it's doing all right. Last one went on a fixed price for $215. This one goes for $252 on auction, which generally I think that's good. If an auction's going for 20% more than the last buy it now price, it's not a bad spot to be at. If we scroll back to last year, it'll be down, but relative to now, seems to be up, and obviously Ronaldo sort of had a lot going against him, so it is what it is. Next to that, we have a Eusebio, which was what I was looking at there. So Velita back, PSA 1. Basically, here you have the blue and the yellow. The blue is the more common, but the Velita back is, sort of less common within the more common segment. So it's what you prefer if you're getting a blue. I like the blue. I like the yellow. I think it's a very, very cool picture of Eusebio and a fun sticker as well. Back looks pretty good here. Gets the top 30% eye appeal, and looking at past sales, doesn't do too strong. The last PSA 1 with no eye appeal, although it does look pretty good. It looks pretty white. Again, I said it last time. I'll say it again. Golden's scans are ridiculously light. Sort of probably like my face right now. Yeah, it's very, very appropriate. Like my face right now, that's basically Golden scans. The light is just ridiculous. You can't see a thing. And so I don't even think I'd trust that. You look at it and you think, man, that's white as day, but I don't think so. I'd look it up, but PSA wasn't taking pictures of their items back in the day. I'm guessing it's probably decently brown. Nonetheless, beside the point, if you compare back here, though, $210 for the last PSA 1, not a bad sale. So within the ballpark, and a fun Eusebio, in my opinion. Here we have a sealed pack. This is from a set where I did look it up just to sort of see what I was looking at, because I didn't really remember too great, but I have seen some of them before. There's this DeStefano, there's a Jimmy Greaves in here, there's obviously a Pele, you have a Garrincha, there's a ton of fun ones, Bobby Charlton, there's great names in the set. I also think there's other people that are like boxing and all that stuff. I don't know if this is solely a soccer release, because it does have a soccer stadium on the pack, or if it's a mixed bag of different sports. So I'd be interested. I'd imagine it's soccer, but it very well could be a mixed bag. Above that, we have another pack, actually, and this one is the one that has sort of the plastic back Pele. I'm not sure if this pack in particular has plastic or cardboard. I'm not sure how that works, but I know that this release for Pele has two different kinds, and there's, of course, other players as well within the set that people would care about, but as you can see there, Pele goes for a good bit. Looking back over, PSA 2 Beckenbauer. If the SGC 1 earlier for 130 was a good price, I'm guessing a PSA 2 at 324 is also a very good price. Gonna lean over to try to avoid the sun. We'll see how that works. Keep it moving though. We have a 2020 Maldini auto going for 384. Then we have an Eric Cantona and a 1986-87 Panini foot. This is a PSA 9. It says pop 1 of 1, 384. Not a bad price. This is pretty interesting. We'll see the rookie here in a bit. This is the 2005 Messi Este in a PSA 9. Goes for 444. As you can see, pop 1 of 19. 1 graded higher. That's going to be interesting long-term to see how many 10s they put out of this. I get so annoyed by the idea that once PSA realizes that something can be milked for really rare PSA 10s, that they obviously take full advantage of it. Because the way they graded early Messis, they were very nice about it. They'd give out 10s. And now for like second and third year Messis, obviously they're not being submitted in the same, bulk amount. But if you had one of these in mint condition, I mean, this goes for $444. Would you not send it in? Yet there's only one PSA 10. I find that very hard to believe. Above that, this sale was crazy. I thought that this was very, very high. But I will say that this is probably the second, if not the first best looking Messi, and I don't know if that's a hot take to people, but I firmly believe that. And a lot of people that I talk to that aren't even into soccer cards, I'll ask them just because I'm curious, like, what do you feel about this? Or what do you feel about the Messi rookies? Which one do you like the most? Like, yada, yada. And a lot of people pick this one. A lot of people do because it just looks so good. I mean, color match. PSA 6, though, really, really high. I looked at past sales for this, and it is pretty crazy. So basically, yeah, I mean, you can, and this is something too, I was going to point out in the Discord, but I never got around to it. A lot of best offers, a lot of fixed prices compared to what was going on back in the day. We'll look back a little bit more, but here, notice, best offer, fixed price, fixed price, fixed price, fixed, I mean, there's some auctions there, sure. Best offer, fixed price, there's so many. And this is just PSA 6. I mean, if we go to everything, there's going to be a lot too. But PSA 6 goes for $444. I mean, recently, apparently $500 on fixed price as well. $375 for the white one, which is, I mean, that's a very low grade for the white. I mean, it's pretty crazy. These are in PSA 6, $400 to $500 almost all the time. While if we scroll back in April, right, $195, $225, $276, $206, right? They've basically doubled in price, and no one talks about it. Just because honestly, I think it's sort of the same thing that people talk about in the sense that they're bored of certain cards. I think people are bored about talking about certain cards, so people just don't talk about this type of stuff. But I mean, that's sort of where Messi's been at and sort of what's happening lately. Will it continue? I don't know. Obviously, this is sort of a high point, you would presume, for Messi. But at the same time, with him being in America, there's going to be a lot of spotlight on him. Of course, it will, ebb and flow, but generally, I think it's a very good thing, and we're seeing that right now. Next to that, we have a Duncan Edwards rookie here in a PSA 6. I think we saw that run recently as well, maybe in a couple other grades. Here we have a triad of a bunch of different Italian players, Rossi, Ancelotti, and Zoff in a PSA 10, going for $468. Above that, PSA 8 Baresi. I did peek at this just to see. This was down a good bit. So last 6 went for $200, and last PSA 9 went for $2,200. Last PSA 8.5 did $1,500, so you would presume an 8 at $500 isn't the best of prices, but it's not terrible. I mean, for a defender as well. Obviously, Baresi a legend. No doubt about that. Also, really love the picture. I mean, he's kind of standing there somewhat awkwardly, but I love the landscape view behind it, so that's always been a favorite. 2020 Heung-min Son Color Blast. We have a Platini 5 here that's been pretty beaten up. I took a peek at this as well. This PSA 5 goes for $516. Last 8 went for $4,000. Before this, a 5 goes for $700, near about that. And yeah, this was one that, I mean, pre-boom, we could scroll all the way back. This was a huge card in a 5. Since then, it's either just presumed that there was a lot more out there than people thought, or that you can remove them from albums without much difficulty. But this is one that, I mean, back in 2019, $400 to $600. Now, they did exist, and as you can see in high grade, I mean, they came out, but For a while there, it was a lot of low grade selling. As you can see here, 1s were going for 500, and now it's back to the point where 5s are going for 500. So tides have shifted, and Platini isn't really a fan favorite in the hobby at this point. I don't really see anyone posting them. Maybe I'm not following the right people. I'm sure that's, to some extent the problem. But at the same time, I never hear anything. SGC 7.5 Monday Chromo Messi going for 540. Felt moderately light, at least, compared to that blue one right there, but it is SGC, so it is what it is. Patrick Vieira, PSA 8, this is pop 1 of 1. Very hard to get PSA 8s and higher, of course, because, 1, it's pop 1 of 1, so people aren't doing it, but 2, the black borders on the backside are just very, very difficult and chip easily, so it is a tough one. Here we have a 1960 bill of Didi and Pele and a PSA 1 going for 600. Pretty rare to see there. Pop 1 of 2, 1 higher. Then in this row, we have a Jude Bellingham Blue Wave auto going for 630. We have a postcard from the 1963 Nanina Pele, as we can see on the back. Postcard, but looks really, really good on the front, so make it that way you will. 74 Johan Cruyff München 74. This is the, of course, German World Cup, of which we have here a PSA 5, and I thought this was a high price, and it was, because we had a PSA 7 recently that we saw just a few weeks back for $960, so almost the same price for 2 grades lower. Pretty crazy. I don't know if the 7 was an insane deal or the 5's just a bit of an overpay. I don't know. The 7, though, to be fair, is a bit off-center top to bottom. That top is pretty thick. But I think people just overrate centering a lot, because the graders see centering. They're not missing that. So in my opinion, it's very well accounted for already. But yeah, I don't know how to explain that sale. I don't know if that's really high or the other one's really low, or maybe a mix of both. That's probably the answer. Above that, we have a 1935 Miazza in a surfboard here, going for 750, pop 1 of 0, 1 higher. That just broke my brain. Okay, I thought it was going to be just pop 1 of 0, but it's also 1 higher. Okay, well then, PSA 4, pretty rare. Pretty rare. That's all I'm going to say. Kevin Keegan, 1971. We have the Marshall Cavendish. Basically, Keegan has a few different rookies that are debated in terms of which is which, what you should care about. They all have sort of their own different intricacies as to why they should be, also shouldn't be cared about. So you do have to take that into account here. I did take a look at this. It was a pop 1 of 5, at least by PWCC's word, and we've seen 5 of these sell all within the last year. So started at 2,070, went to 1,560, 750, 1,000, 780. So it seems like it's, starting to find a floor. This is sort of one where, maybe you question if that's the case, because obviously when they came out, it dropped a lot, and now it's sort of stagnating, but, down 25% from the last one. What if the next one goes down 25? And we see this a lot. It's hard to tell, especially with Kevin Keegan, Ballon d'Or, multiple, I believe, I think 2, but just not really cared about in the hobby. And when you have multiple stickers or, collectible items that people are going to have to debate, it just becomes hard. And yeah, I don't think it does them, in the best light either. That is a very, very rough looking item there for him, but it is what it is. Also, the sticker doesn't do him very well either. I don't think he's portrayed in the best light there. Ronaldo PSA 10, 990. Above that, we have a couple 3 nuns here. So we have a William Folk in a 4 and a Gio Smith in a 4.5. So both of these pretty big sales. When we take a look back, I want to look at the Folk one because that one had a sale from pre-soccer being big, so I thought that was going to be fun to compare. PSA 6 back in 2018 did 204. This time SGC 4 does 1,020, so a massive boom there on that. But of course, when you only have one selling in 5 years, a little over 5 years, and a lot more people desiring it, that's going to be the case. So that just makes sense. And, relatively similar with the Gio Smith over a long term, you presume. So, next to that, we have a Eusebio 1964 Francesa. We've been seeing a lot of the PSA 1 Francesas lately. I think it's just sort of a run of someone submitting them because I don't remember seeing many before. All of them very unique, though. This one people were sort of fawning over in the Vintage Soccer Discord. Take a peek down below if you enjoy that. Fun place to chat with other folk. But yeah, this is just a fun one. Big blown up picture of Eusebio in front of an image of the world. And love the colors, yellow, red, blue, you got it all. Moving into the top 9, we have a PSA 10 Neymar Brasileiro in a pop 1 of 1 going for 1,500. Mighty fine price, obviously. I see a lot of these, I guess, raw and lower grade going for very affordable prices, but when you get a pop one of 110, you're going to do big numbers, and 1500 does seem to be pretty decent, especially for, again, Neymar that we talked about earlier, isn't seen in the best light of the hobby, and this was graded, I guess, somewhat recent, but a decent bit ago, at least to where, in my mind, it's respectable. Usually I like to be like 10 million, 15 million back, and at that point I feel relatively comfortable. Here with the BGS 4.5 Messi, I did take a peek at this just to see, because we don't look at a lot of, lower graded BGS. So here the last 4.5 did 1380 in August, and then before that we have, 1600 last year in September, and then 1300 in August before that. And then, yeah, I mean, that's basically it. So compared to that, pretty decent. BGS isn't, gaining steam, I guess, the same way that PSA is, but it's still doing relatively okay on its own. Here we have a PSA 8 Messi Este sticker. So this one will be the first of two that we'll see. I did think that this was a pretty good 8. It's authentic, at least from my eye. The corners are a little tough, but for an 8, I think it was pretty fair. Personally, I wasn't quite expecting it to go this high. I'll sort of explain. I don't know if this is the same one that was on the PWCC fixed price marketplace, but basically a couple weeks back I was looking at the PWCC marketplace and there was a PSA 8 listed like fixed price for $2,000 all in. And I was very much thinking, once I sold my Maradona, got some money, maybe I'll buy that. I think the guy then just noticed he could get more on auction and went and sold it, and that's what he did. So I was looking at it, and I saw it just sitting there at $2,000. I was like, man, that's weird, because, in February, one sold for $2,000. In February, one sold for $2,200, then $2,200, then $2,500. And with what Messi's doing now, I think that's probably closer to $3,000. I probably should have just went for it anyways and just trusted it. But, he ended up taking it off, sold it on auction, and did pretty well with it. That does a decent price, but I will say something that's sort of helping this sticker that I feel is a bit artificial. PSA hasn't graded this sticker in almost like 2 years at this point, and so whenever you're not getting any supply increase, if there's any demand increase, that's going to naturally sort of rise prices. People are a bit hesitant to buy it, and it is also hindered by the fact that there are fakes out there and other slabs that sort of hinder its ceiling, because people see other comps that are really just fake comps, but they see the comps and they think it matters. But yeah, up to 2,600, so that is interesting to see. As we go higher here, we'll see what is a 1970 paperback Bisfalita. This is the Panini World Cup Bisfalita back PSA 10 sticker. So initially I saw this and I'm like, man, that is a high price, right? Feels high. I guess it's pop 1 of 1 at the time being. It is recently graded, so keep an eye on that. Definitely would be more, I'd presume. But pop 1 of 1 goes for 2,640. I thought it was high. I actually looked it up and it feels moderately low. So when we look here, there is a PSA 9 international back. So 1 grade lower and international back that went last year in October for $1,500. Card Ladder says it's now $1,200. So I guess relative to that, I would definitely pay up another $1,000 or, another 60, 70% to get a PSA 10 of the rarer back. I think that makes a lot of sense. I'm not saying that this was a great buy on its own or not a great buy, but at least relative to the other sale that I had to go off of, felt pretty decent to me. But yeah, $3,000 for paper packs, I do get a little weary, just because, I know people fake a lot of that type of stuff, and just in general, right? I don't know about it in soccer stickers, but I'd imagine the same sort of, motives still preside here, so it's going to be the case, right? But we'll keep moving. 2005, Lionel Messi, 71 bis, PSA 9. Funny that is the 71 bis as well, both in his rookie and second year. This goes for $2,880. Big price. I thought it was really big, but it actually wasn't too big. So this does, a good percent increase, almost 50% over the last one in December of last year. It goes from $1,710 to $2,800, almost $3,000. But there were sales before this back during, again, the boom for $4,000 and $6,000, but they'll only be down, 50% from the boom on, what is a nice Messi card, but not like, the most highly coveted. Doesn't feel bad to me. Here we have a Roberto Carlos PSA 9, so I want to get people's opinions on this. I'll tell you mine, and you let me know yours. Mine would just be that I'd be nervous on these. I see them sell almost every single time at auction for like $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, like somewhere in that range, and I don't know why. So looking at Card Ladder, I have some prior sales from a year or two ago when prices were much higher, at least on this type of stuff in particular. But when we're looking here, right, like a PS, like back in the day, what was getting bought and sold? So we have PSA 5, PSA 2, PSA 3, PSA 2 never stuck, PSA 7, PSA 8 Pop 2, PSA 7, PSA, like, you get the idea. It's a PSA 3, 7, 5, 2, 1, like, it's not that great. Lately, PSA 9, PSA 4, PSA 9, PSA 9, PSA 9, PSA 4, PSA 9, and then we start to get back to even some more normal stuff like a 3, a 2, a 9, and before that, you get back to what is more, I guess, a more normal sense of what was going on at the time. But for some reason lately, there have been a lot of 9s. And for whatever reason that is, whether it be there's just a lot of maybe sealed product that's getting open, maybe there's a lot of these in good condition that people didn't know about that they're finding. But I mean, that's a significant chunk of change, $3,200 for something that we've now seen at auction. And I don't know, maybe it's the same ones just getting relisted and chilled. And I don't know. But a 9, a 9, a 9, a 9, like so many 9s that it just makes me weary. I'm not someone that really has any major connection to Roberto Carlos, so I have no real intent on entering, but it is something I feel like is worth noting if you are, someone on the outside looking in. And then that brings us to the top 3 here. So we have a 1972 Falcao. This is a Mosquet. I actually never tried to pronounce that until right now, so I'm not sure. Cracks de Euro 72. This is red. Oh man, Al was talking about, there's another version of this. It might be blue, it might be green. It's some other nice color though. And basically there are 2 different versions from my understanding. Don't really have too much on this card personally. Haven't really seen it as much. And this is what I was talking about earlier in terms of the Eusebio. I also like 1970s Brazil. I think 1970s Brazil has some of the most unique looking soccer items you could ever find. And this is part of why I love soccer. And it's also part of why I'm very burnt out and annoyed with the craze in the soccer hobby in particular around modern and numbers and like this whole sort of, in my opinion, perverted craze around rarity. I'd much rather just experience the type of soccer collecting that is just to be had at large, like this type of a Falcao. Legendary player, legendary midfielder, not a great era for Brazil in terms of quality, but not the best in terms of results, especially for what you'd expect, both from Brazil and the team at large. So very notable rookie in general, and obviously a very decent price. Went up to $37.20 from what it sounded like in the Discord. A lot of people eyeing it, but not a lot of people eyeing it at this number. Obviously just takes 2. Next to that, we have a Pele. This is the 1964 Panini Calciatore with the Velita back. So nice looking back, of course. And top 30% Pop 101, none higher. As always, how do you have a top 30% on Pop 101? I do not know. But I did want to take a look at this. And there have been some sales, of course, none for a 6. We have a PSA 2 here for $300. We have a PSA 1 for $200, a 2 for $500, a 5 for $1,200, and a 1 for $460. And before that, a 1 for $450 and a 1 for $66 all the way back in the day. So, pick whichever one you want. None of them are even close to this one. This goes for a good premium over, and does a mighty fine number there at near 5,000 for a PSA 6. Also graded a decent time ago, so I will point that out. And then we conclude with the man himself, the man of the hour, Lionel Messi, here in a PSA 9 Este going for 5,000. So pretty hefty penny. We saw the PSA 8 go for what, 2,500 near about. Typically, in my head, the premium from 8 to 9 is usually a double in price, so that makes sense. It's about right in line. When we look here at some of the past sales, so we have 6,000 in December by a best offer. That's right after the World Cup craze. So if you're buying something on best offer right after the craze, and you're only down, 15, 20% on an auction 8 months later when the craze has subsided mostly, but it's sort of restarted. That doesn't seem like a bad sale to me. In November, before the World Cup when it was $4,500, so he was paying a premium knowing what he knows now, but still 5,000 doesn't seem crazy to me, especially back here. Of course, we'll go back. I think all-time sales, like 15K, something like that, and now it's down to 5, so down 66%. But, I do feel like it's a little unfair what's happened to the sticker, and most pre-modern stickers in general. A lot of the price suppression, I feel like, is just due to people not having certainty in it, which is very fair given where we're at. But I think that's a big part. Something I will point out here, I don't think this is a 9. Like, if I'm a PSA grader, I'm not giving this a 9. I think it's off-center top to bottom a little, but I also think right to left is incredibly bad. These have this problem a lot where they're shifted a bit towards the left, and yeah, it doesn't look great to me. Also, on top of that, if you go and then zoom in, not only is the centering very bad in and of itself, you also then have basically a lot of fuzz on the edges. Almost every corner is moderately soft. And so for me, that doesn't really warrant a 9, but obviously grading is subjective, and thus you will get some discrepancies between cards. But yeah, that's going to be it for the auction this week. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. I had a good old time myself. I thought that the top 10 to 20 was pretty strong, and I think that's what we're seeing most weeks now. Top 10 to 20 is pretty strong. Maybe 50 to 80 before that isn't the strongest, but they still have great cards and a ton of fun to look through and sort of see the odds and ends that soccer has to offer. So yeah, that is going to be it for the video today. Of course, hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure to leave a like. Also, if you want to see more videos like this as soon as I go live, make sure to subscribe. And we also have Discords down below if you want to check out the places that I chat with other folks about soccer and just card collecting in general. Tons of fun. Would recommend. And also would love to hear your thoughts down below in the comments. Anything you thought sold high, low, maybe things that I don't know that you do that you can help me out on. I'd love to hear. But yeah, that'll be it for me. Hopefully you guys have a wonderful day, and peace.